Sometimes in life we just suffer. Sometimes it's from being totally withdrawn, or so much stress that we are totally anxious, or so tired that we are totally burnt out. But our current position is not our final destination. No, indeed. There's hope. So whether it's your personal life, your career, your relationship, your business, or your job, we say there's reason to believe again. And we present from Andy's personal development, the breakout room. It's the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Stay tuned for more. Hey, welcome. This is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, your host on the podcast that caters to health, happiness, and prosperity. Remember, we are Christ centered and transformation driven. And we have an amazing guest who's going to share some really wonderful contents with us today live in the breakout room. Her name is Kim Rahir, and her story is one that you really need to listen to and pay attention to. It says that from wheelchair to weightlifting podium is a 60-year-old mother of three who was diagnosed with MS 10 years ago and decided to ignore her doctor's advice and muscle her way back to a happy life. There is so much more content and vital information from our guest, but we let her do the talking all for herself. So, without further ado, let's welcome our special guest on today's edition of the Breakout Room, Kim Rahir. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for you for being here. We appreciate you being here and we appreciate you. So, let's begin by telling us about some things that really resonate with you the most about your story. When you look back in reflection at the times that you spent in the past and the stuff that you had to go through to get where you are today, what is one or two things that stand out the most about your story that really impacts upon your life?
The one thing that is really surprising and that some people still don't understand is even though I had to go through some very challenging and dark times,
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for these experiences. And that's it, for many people, especially some in my family who were with me at the time when I spent so much time in hospital and couldn't work and I was miserable. Um, they struggle a little bit to understand this, but it's changed my perspective on life and the way I live my life so much and so much for the better that I'm actually grateful for everything that I had to go through. That's one of the striking things. And another one is that, and this is something that I want to carry into the world also with my work, is uh, there's always hope. There's always something you can do. You might find yourself in a really dark place, but there's always something you can do. And I know that for some people it's extremely hard to believe, and they're probably finding themselves at a spot now where they feel helpless and hopeless. But something is always possible, no matter how small.
Yeah, and I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Kim. You showed resilience, you showed heart and commitment to bounce back. And most of all, according to what you said, no matter what situation you are in, there is always room for hope. There's always a better way. There's always more to come. It's just a matter of how we see it in terms of our lens. So, in terms of what you're doing, let me get directly to what you have specialized yourself in and what you have worked with. How do we find ourselves in a place where we arrange and balance our lifestyle so that we can build muscle and strength? What is the key to that?
I think the key to this is starting small.
Uh-huh.
It's a little bit against the grain of the times, I think, because we're
Mm-hmm.
always encouraged to think big and to have
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
huge, inspiring, even scary goals.
Yeah.
We dream of big overhauls, of becoming someone totally different, of getting a totally new life. But actually, it's the small, tiny things that we do every single day that will make the biggest difference in the long run, with the focus on doing them every day. And that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. If we want to be able to do them every day, they need to be small. Otherwise, we will be totally overwhelmed. We will experience a lot of resistance from inside, from around us. So we want to start really small. Start moving, start with exercises that we can do today and that challenges just a little bit. Make it small, make it short, but make it very, very consistent, and that will pay off, and it will pay off, like, super fast. You'll be surprised. If you start something from scratch, it will just take a few weeks, and you feel much better.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Kim. I'm getting two things coming strongly out of what you're saying. The first thing is consistency, and the second thing is incrementally, small steps, steps by step, day by day. I usually say it this way: life to me should be lived one day at a time and 1% at a time. Don't have
Absolutely.
expectations, because in case some things don't go the way that we would like it to, and there's always those variables in life. There is so much inconsistency sometimes in what's happening with the ecosystems around us. But if we just focus on the little things, as you say, eventually over time, we can just develop and grow to the next level. So, keeping it in the context of what we are talking about, what's the best way to start strength training when we consider ourselves to be in a midlife crisis? And many of us are challenged with that period of time that we call the midlife crisis. But how can we even start to build strength and muscles at that period in time of our lives?
It's that just one big rule. You have to start where you are at, and I think
Uh
that's
huh.
the one that gets sort of overlooked
Uh huh.
most of the time.
Yeah.
Because we live in the time of Google, we have the greatest workouts at, the tip of a finger. And
Yes.
they really are. There's fantastic stuff on YouTube. You can find a perfect workout regimen, but it might not be perfect for you. You need to
Right.
know in midlife, you have your history. You might have high mileage joints. You might have a history of illnesses. You might have a history of sedentary lifestyle. Maybe you used to be an athlete in high school. And
Mm,
your memory of what you can do, what your body can do, does not really correspond to what your body can actually do today. So if
right.
you want to start safely and not get frustrated or overwhelmed, you need to know exactly what your status is. That's why I always start when I work with my clients, I always start with a thorough assessment to know exactly what their level of mobility is, what their level of strength is, and that's something, once you've reached midlife, you really cannot skip that step, because you will either do something that's not challenging enough, or which is much more frequent, you will do something that is too challenging, that does not correspond to your current physical status, and you will get frustrated, definitely,
Yeah.
overwhelmed, and, even worse, maybe hurt. So you
Wow.
really need to find out, what is my situation today?
Hmm. Wow. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So, in terms of women, and I just want to stay with women for a bit, what would you tell women who think it's too late for them to start getting strong, to start focusing on physical health? Though they need a change of attitude, is there a mindset shift that has to happen before?
That's a great question. I love that question because it's the eternal question, it's a little bit about the hen and the egg. It's also, is it
Yeah.
mind over matter or is it matter
Yeah.
over mind? And I think
Ah.
it's a two-way conversation between
Okay.
mind and body.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's never too late. That's
Right.
a simple fact. I think in the 70s, there was researchers went into retirement homes and they started training people who were in their 90s, and they got stronger and they grew muscle.
Yes.
Well, the body does
Right.
what the body does. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like objectively, it's never too late. But of course, there's the point of view, feeling so tired, feeling so heavy, feeling so overwhelmed with your life, and you feel it's too late because you don't have the energy. You feel you will never have like the motivation to start something because everything seems so hard and so difficult. And again, and this is where I think there's many situations where matter over mind could be the method of choice, is when you start doing small things, and they can be super tiny, but you do something physical with your body, you exercise in a small way, you start first of all to become physically better, but you start also to convince your mind that you can actually do something. And then this two-way communication works to your advantage because you're doing something, your mind thinks, maybe it's not quite too late. Maybe I can do just a little bit more. You do a little bit more, and you create a virtuous cycle where you convince yourself. And by that's the thing. Um, we always think that we need to have this mindset shift and that we have to just have this, there's like a click or something or an epiphany or something. And then all of a sudden we see the light, um, and we become this different person. Whereas the most surefire and most proven way is by doing these small things, you become that person and the mind follows.
Yeah. Sounds like a wonderful experience. Thank you for sharing, Kim. So I'm gonna share a very powerful video with you, and we're gonna go down memory lane a bit. And I'm not gonna play the whole thing, and I just want you to give a comment on it after, because I think this is the real foundation of your life and your story. So here we go.
So it all started in 2008. I had just moved to a new country with my family, three kids. They were 6, 8, and 10 years old. And I had landed a full time job, shift work in journalism. And I felt this was the pinnacle. That was what I always had wanted for myself, a good career and a family with kids. Um, I had sort of made it, right? It was great. And then one day, when I picked up my kids from school, my right eye went cross. I couldn't see properly. Went to the doctor, was rushed to the hospital, stayed there for 6 weeks. After 2 days, I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't walk, was paralyzed. The doctors didn't know what was going on. It was utterly terrifying, as you can imagine. And my whole identity, this idea of me being this invincible power woman who had it all, the family and the job, it was gone from one day to the next. And after 6 weeks, I got home. I was in a wheelchair first. I recovered very slowly. Then I walked on crutches. But those were dark days for me. It was like inside my soul, a door had opened, a door that had utter darkness behind it. And I struggled to keep that door shut. I also struggled to find myself again because I clearly was not that woman. I couldn't look after my kids. I couldn't go to work. Who was I? And then something interesting happened because as soon as I could walk more or less well with crutches, I started challenging myself. I walked half an hour on crutches to hospital appointments. I walked to the train station to pick up my kids. And I felt this drive that I've always had. I wanted to challenge myself physically and mentally. And I began to realize that my identity was not really defined by these outer signs that you could see, not by me being a mother or by me having a job. My identity was what I wanted, what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed doing, my values. That was my identity, and it was still there. It was
So, on that note, I wanted to end the video when you recognize, Kim, what your true identity was. Tell us how you felt when you realized that they had diagnosed you with something that you simply did not see coming and was not prepared for. What that emotional status was like for you.
Well, you're terrified,
Wow.
because you don't know what's happening, and there's
Yeah.
also disappointment, actually, disappointment.
Mm,
I'm not the kind of person who has, like, the perfect life plan,
yeah.
in my mind, and I didn't want I didn't plan for at age this, I wanna be there, and at age that, I wanna be there. I know some people do that, they have this
Yeah.
sort of image. I didn't have that, but still, I had certain expectations of what my life was going to be like, and I had this really conviction that I was indestructible. So that was
Wow.
shattered from one day to the next. So it's it's hard to describe what you feel in those moments, because you tend to sort of go down rabbit holes of fear where you think, "Oh my God, what about this and what about that?" And after a while, I just decided um, that this was not helpful and that I needed to just focus on the present moment, because looking ahead was so scary. And the big picture that we all supposedly always have to keep in mind was not my friend. The big picture made me very afraid. So I just
Yeah.
focused on the next cup of coffee, the next thing that I could do, uh, just what I could do today, spending
Mm-hmm.
time with my kids. Um, that was that was my main focus. There's also a bit of a feeling of being betrayed by your body, because
Wow.
autoimmune
Yeah.
diseases,
Yeah.
it's your body attacking itself, and you think, "What
Mm-hmm.
on earth is going on here? Why is that
Yes.
happening?" And you don't feel it. I mean, you don't have any sensation until you feel like the damage that's being done, and you don't really know. I mean, it's basically your immune system is making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but you ask yourself, "Why? What is this?" So you think you know your body, it's the place you've lived in forever, and then all of a sudden it pulls such a number on you. That's
Strange. Yes.
yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So actually, you had to work in steps and in moments, as you said, just focus on the next cup of coffee, spending time with your children. Mentally, how challenging was that for you, Kim? And what did you learn as a result of that experience?
At the time, it really took all my energy was for staying focused on the moment, because
Yeah.
that's not easy. It's also not
Hmm.
something that I had been taught as a child. I don't think many people are really taught this
Right.
capacity of being present in the here and
Hmm.
now, because we're
Hmm.
always, in our culture, it's always the big plans and the big projects and moving forward,
Yes.
forward, forward. So that took all of my energy. Um, but I realized pretty soon that this was actually a good place to be, uh,
Okay.
because I was before I was ill, I was quite stressed out, and then, come home from work, make dinner for the kids, look at their homework. You tend to think, "Oh my God, this is all so much, and I don't know how I'm gonna handle this." When I was in hospital and I couldn't walk, I thought, "Oh my God, if
Hmm.
only I could do the dishes, I'd be so happy." So focusing on the moment, spending time with your loved ones, then when you really do focus, the quality of that time and that experience, increases manifold, and that's a great compensation for the fear that's somewhere in the background and that you're sort of locking away.
Yeah. Yeah. I commend you for somewhat daring into places where many would not have gone, and considering the age limit. So many times, Kim, we put limitations on ourselves because maybe we don't have enough zeros in the bank account, or we don't have enough support, or we're not at the right age, for example. But at the end of the day, you did not concern yourself with all of those things. You dared yourself. And because you did, you created a certain avenue that now challenges mainly women, but overall people who may find themselves in a similar situation, but realizing, wait a minute, if Kim can do it, we can do it too. And I must commend you rather, for that. So tell us about the weightlifting perspective of things. How did you actually came to the place where you decided against the doctor's advice to venture into muscle building and weightlifting and so on?
Yeah, it's I I still try to figure out why I did what I did. I just remember 2 things. First of all,
Hmm.
the doctor didn't say outright no. The doctor said,
Right.
"Well, be careful."
Mm,
Until this day, I don't know what that means. Did he
right.
have any particular dangers in mind that I should be
Mm,
careful of? Or
hmm.
my suspicion is he was not really sure what this could mean or what this could do or not do. It was like unknown territory for him, exercise.
Okay. Yes.
So he was not going to pronounce himself. Let's put it
Hmm.
this way. I found a nurse later who showed me how to inject myself
Hmm.
after my diagnosis, and she said exercise is great. It makes you fatigue resistant, and so that was the green light for me. I I had this urge to I wanted to be physically strong. I wanted to take charge of my body again. I wanted to take my power back. And I think it's a mix of the hospital experience. When you're in hospital, I mean, I was paralyzed from the hips downwards, which makes it worse. You have zero power. I think you have
Yeah.
minus power. You cannot
Hmm.
decide when the light is on in your room or off. You cannot decide when someone is in your room. You don't decide when you get up. I couldn't decide when I was going to shower or going to the bathroom.
Wow.
So I felt totally powerless.
Yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
this feeling that I mentioned before of betrayal. It was like if I could
Hmm.
sort of take retake control or charge of my body and make it really strong and functioning. Um, Maybe that was some kind of security that I was looking for. I just know that I had this drive. I wanted to become really strong, and I found myself the right book for this. One of the first that said women should lift heavy, um, and I started training. Looked very well into form. Made sure that I lifted perfectly, like the pictures in the book, and I wanted to do everything perfectly right. And um, I think it's a mix that drove me. I just know that the urge, the desire to do this was overwhelming, and I just needed to go out there and start doing that.
Wow. Wonderful. And when I look at what you have accomplished, it included a European champion in masters weightlifting in your age and weight category. Tell us about that experience, Kim, and
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you so much. That's um, So I started lifting, and what I did at the beginning for the first years was what we call power lifting, like
Hmm.
normal moves like
Yeah.
deadlift, and bench presses, and squats and everything. And then I worked with a personal trainer after we had moved to Spain,
Yeah.
and he said, "Would you like to try a bit of Olympic weightlifting?" And
Ah.
my memory of Olympic weightlifting was watching the Olympic Games with my dad and seeing sort of overweight men in weird leotards lifting heavy weights.
Right.
Um, but I was curious and I said, yeah, why not? And this is also something. Um, I was in my 50s by then, and I had all this
Yeah.
history. And I think because of my experience and because of my new perspective, I said, yes, let's give it a shot.
Ah.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure. younger me would have said, "I wanna try this." Younger
Ah,
me might have said,
yes.
I don't know."
Mm.
So, I tried it. Olympic weightlifting has just 2 movements. You have to lift the bar overhead. The first movement is you do that in one go, which is called a snatch, and the second one,
Mhm.
you lift the bar onto your shoulders first, and then you lift it overhead. That's a clean and jerk. So I tried
Right.
it, totally sucked at it, and, was also hooked because it's the mix of strength and technique, so it's super
Mhm.
challenging. You can never do I mean, that's the goal, but, not one lift looks like the other, so you have to work on it all the time. And I loved it so much that I switched to, a pure weightlifting gym where after 2 weeks, they asked me if I wanted to compete, and they're, "What? I'm
Mhm.
55." But then I said, "Okay, let's do this." And I'm again,
Okay.
in my 30s, I would not have said yes, but because I had sort of nothing to lose and I thought, "Wow, this is going to be interesting," I said yes, and I started competing.
Ah, wonderful. And look what you have accomplished as a result. And, I mean, we can share a little laughter about it, but it's an important lesson of the resilience and the mindset that you showed to get that done. So maybe we could look at this picture here and you can tell us the process. Here we go.
Yes. That's the end position of the clean and jerk. So,
Yeah, I thought so. I thought so. Yes,
yes.
yes, yes.
So first you put the bar onto the shoulders and then you have to push it up there and you split your legs to get under the bar. So it makes it easier. So you don't have to lift the weight all the way above your head, but you sort of dive under a little bit. But the arms need to be straight, otherwise it's a
Hmm.
no lift.
Yeah, and there's a perfect sort of axis that exists between the front leg and the back leg in terms of the balance, right?
Yes, your center of gravity has to be like straight, right in the middle. In the
Ah,
middle. Otherwise,
right.
I mean, this is just the bar. But if when you have
Hmm.
weight overhead, um, just 1 millimeter too much to the front, or too
Hmm.
far to the front, or 1 millimeter too far to the back, and you cannot control the bar, and it goes away from
Right.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Specific technique. Wow. I love that. So, in terms of what you do with regards to the weightlifting aspect of things, how important is dieting in terms of what you intake in your body, whether it be proteins, calories, carbohydrates, whatever it is that you do? Is there a specific plan that you would also advise women in their midlife crisis? I hate using that word. Um, but you understand what I'm saying? Let's say in the same age bracket like you were when you started, and they're thinking, how am I going to make these changes? How important is the adjustment for the diet so that you have the success that you need with the weightlifting exercises?
It's really crucial. Let me just say one short thing about midlife crisis. Actually, a crisis is not nothing but a decisive situation. A crisis is where something is decided, like yes or no. A
Yeah.
patient in crisis is, it's a situation he's going to live or he's going to die.
Yeah.
And I think midlife is a fork in the road. So it,
Mm-hmm.
the word crisis is not that bad because
All right.
you can still make changes that will
Yeah.
influence the way that
Yeah.
you're going to age.
Yeah.
I think it's a fork in the road.
I agree.
And about the food, this
Mm-hmm.
is crucial, especially for women. You have to move away from an idea where um, food is um, sinful, forbidden, creating guilt or shame, and you're only looking at, what foods are bad, what foods can I not eat because I want to be slim or I want to be looking a certain way. Um, you want to see food just as what it is. It's fuel. It's fuel and it fuels your everyday activity. And you want to look at your plate and ask yourself, is this going to give my body what it needs to perform? And it's the same for, when you go weightlifting is when you have your everyday life. So many women, they are like crazy busy doing so many things. They need to perform too, so they also need to ask themselves, what kind of foods do I actually need to feel good and to perform well? And basically, you can build your meal, every single meal, with a simple blueprint where you get a source of lean protein, you add tons and tons of vegetables, and for breakfast you can have a piece of fruit if you don't like vegetables for breakfast.
Hmm.
Make sure that the fats that you use are healthy, and if you're physically very active, you're going to add some carbohydrates. If you have a very sedentary life, you will get most of your carbohydrates from vegetables, to make sure you don't have an overload of energy on your body. And that's it. What will help me perform? You want to look after your muscle mass, so you want to eat protein at every meal. And I think that's the one thing that's hardest for women. Um, and it's something that we work on uh, in my approach, in my coaching approach, is something that
Hmm.
that we really focus on, because most of the other sort of nutrition elements then fall into place. If you can, you know, nail your protein intake, the rest will sort of take care of itself.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing, Kim. One of the many challenges that I see, and I think people struggle a lot with, more women, I think, than men, is what we consider as loose belly fat. And I think that in terms of what they seek, most of them, they go to some level of dieting or some weight loss program. How do you compare what you do, Kim, in your program as to the traditional weight loss programs in terms of the benefits, the comparisons, and what it actually takes in terms of what they have to put out to get the benefit of controlling or managing that loose belly fat?
Yeah. Um, that's a big one. The belly fat is
Yeah,
it's really
yeah.
what annoys so many people, and it seems to. And I think that's a big misconception, and we all fall for this. Many women tell me, like, literally, "Oh, I woke up one morning and I had this belly fat,"
Oh
and
no. Oh
it's not
no.
the case. It's not
No,
the
no,
case.
no.
It's
Yes.
just, but there's this famous tipping point where all of a sudden you
Hmm.
realize that you have this fat around there, and there you have to make a difference between two types of belly fat. There's the one that is subcutaneous. That's the one
Hmm.
that you just described. That's like flabby, and you can sort of roll it
Hmm.
in your hands. But there's
Yeah.
also visceral fat, the one that,
Right.
like, imagine a beer belly of a guy that is, it looks like a balloon, because
Yes.
there's not much subcutaneous fat. I'm struggling with pronouncing this.
Yeah. That's all right.
Um,
That's all right.
but it's the internal organs actually that are covered in
Hmm.
fat, and that's
Yes.
the more dangerous version of belly fat, because
Hmm.
it
Indeed.
predisposes you for cardiovascular disease. The
Yes.
first thing that I make very clear when we want to sort of reduce the belly is it's just fat. It's not a magical substance that clings to your belly. Yes, visceral fat tends to accumulate as we reach midlife. That is true, but still, it's just fat. So if you drop fat, if you reduce overall fat in your body, the belly will go. Now, some people
Mm.
say, "Oh, but I will have get like really skinny legs and arms, and the belly is still there." That's possible, but if you
Right.
reduce the fat enough, sooner or later it will go. It cannot stick. It is just fat. It's not some hormonal substance mix. It is fat, and if you reduce your fat, it will go. How do we do that? That's the thing,
Hmm.
and I think this is a
Yeah.
big difference, because I focus on building muscle,
Hmm.
making sure that we eat enough protein. So instead of dieting and trying to shrink, and that way we can really throttle the metabolism, because we make
Yeah.
the engine smaller. We don't want to do
Hmm.
that. We want to create a bigger engine by building muscle, and we call it recomposition. So yes,
Okay.
we build
Yeah.
muscle,
Yeah.
but we reduce fat. So the weight might not necessarily change a lot, but your clothes will be looser, and you will look totally different. And that's a really important thing to know, because the number on the scale that so many people obsess about, if you were to reduce or try to reduce fat by just dieting, starving yourself, I don't know, most women seem to think that 1,200 calories is like the magic number to lose weight. If
Hmm.
you do that, if you do not eat enough protein and you do not train, you do not strength train, you will lose a bit of fat, but you will lose a lot of muscle. You will lose a lot of lean body mass. So it will also gnaw on your bones and everything. So you're actually creating a smaller engine. What happens after you're done with that diet? The small engine needs less fuel than before.
Mm.
You go back to eating what you had before, but that will not work for maintenance because your engine has shrunk and
Shrunk. Yeah.
it needs less fuel. And that's
Hmm.
why most people, when they go on a diet, they lose the weight and then they put it back on. They put on more than they lost.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking. That's
Yes.
frustrating. And from a mindset point of view, the idea of building something, of building muscle, building a strong body, I think is much more inspiring and motivating than telling yourself that you need to shrink and become smaller and reduce. Because deep down, I think your mind will rebel against this, and you will not be
Mm.
fully on board with that method.
Yeah. 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 Wow. Thank you, Kim. That was very enlightening. We appreciate your information and your knowledge. I'm sure so many people would truly benefit from what you have shared so far on the program. We're going to take a quick break. We have Kim Rahir thriving through adversity, and she has shared so many wonderful nuggets with us, valuable content with regards to how we can do that, both from a mental and physical perspective, taken from a personal story. Just for about 27 seconds, and we'll be right back. FindRadioGuest.com, the place to click to find guests to interview for free. And if you're a radio show booker, podcaster, talk show host, or television producer, then this is the place to get podcasts and radio interviews or promote your books and products as a guest expert sponsor. FindRadioGuest.com. Check it out. Okay, that was a quick break from one of our co-associates, FindRadioGuest.com, and we thank them for their continued commitment and support of our podcast and the programs that we share online. So, Kim, with regards to strength training, let's say someone just wants to build muscle mass alone. The other aspects of them physically, their anatomy is pretty well taken care of, but they may be going into a new career, or they want to prepare for a 5K or a 10K, 15K, or maybe a marathon even. And they just need to do some strength training so that they can endure the pound of running all these distances. How would you advise them to approach that strength training?
Well, you've already mentioned like three different goals in this one sentence. So if you want to l- build muscle mass to become
Yeah.
sort of muscular and bulky,
Yeah.
you need a certain training protocol that stimulates
Hmm.
muscle growth most of all.
Yeah.
If you have some experience, then you can move to what we call splits. So you can train 4 times a week and train arms and then the back and then the legs and
Uh
things
huh.
like that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't. Not many people are interested in that, but if you are, you need like a hypertrophy protocol, as I would call it. If you want to go for a run, you just
Yes.
make sure that your legs are strong, that your joints are mobile. You could do a bit of leg training for that,
Hmm.
but you become a runner by running. That's the thing. So there's not
Ah.
yes, you will make sure that your legs are strong enough and your joints can support the load. You don't want to go from a sedentary life to, running 100K per week in training because you're going to get hurt. But
Hmm.
As a
Yes.
runner, you don't want to carry a lot of mass.
Mm.
That makes the running
Yes.
more
Yes.
difficult. If you have a
Yes.
if you
Yeah.
have a bulky upper body, you have to carry that around on your marathon, you're not gonna like that. It's going to be very, very
Wow.
hard.
Yes.
Look at, the most gifted marathon runners. They are tiny. They are very
Really,
short,
really.
and
Yes. Yes.
they are very small. This is something that, uh, that's really important to point that out. It's called specificity. So for
Mm-hmm.
a certain sport, you have to apply a certain stimulus. This is also why I like to
Right.
talk about training and not
Mm-hmm.
exercising. Training,
Yeah.
you use a stimulus for a desired adaptation. So, like you said, you don't exercise for a marathon, you train for a marathon. So you do
Yes.
a certain thing that creates a certain outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say your everyday person, they just want to develop muscle mass. They're not concerned with excess weight, but they want to become stronger, a little bit more sort of perky and agile. Um, they just need a functional training protocol where they train the whole body 2 to 3 times a week. And what I recommend actually is training movements and not muscles. What does that
Okay.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
Training muscles is what bodybuilders do. So you work for hours on your bicep because you want to have a certain size and shape.
Mm-hmm.
And most people don't need that. Whereas when you train movements, you go to the basic everyday movements that humans do and have been doing for thousands and thousands of years. You do pushing and pulling, carrying, picking stuff up from the floor, getting stuff down from overhead, and that will give you the strength, the muscle, and the functionality to be really unstoppable in your everyday life, and that's going to be all you need.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. So, in terms of the future, we just have about 2.5 minutes to go. What are your plans? What do you envisage? What do you see happening for the work that you're doing with your clients? What does the future hold for Kim Rahir?
Well, with regards to my clients, I just hope that I can help as many women as possible become
Uh-huh.
physically strong and empowered. I
Yeah.
think the world needs powerful women.
Uh huh.
Myself, I'm right now training for the World Championships, which is going to happen in September in Finland.
Ah,
I'm
okay.
training for that.
Right.
I'm going to be fighting for a medal, that's for sure.
Okay.
And in the medium and long term, I just wanna keep showing up. The photo that you shared of the jerk that I did,
Mm-hmm.
there's a
Mm-hmm.
guy at the edge of the photo. He's like 89. He keeps coming
Wow.
to these competitions. He takes a plane,
Impressive.
travels,
Yeah.
weighs himself in, and he steps onto the platform and lifts the weight. And, that's
Wow.
who I wanna be when I'm 80.
Hey. Wow. And I mean, that's really something encouraging and positive to sort of aim at and emulate. Wonderful. So I'm just going to share some stuff on the screen, and I want you to tell the people how they can make contact with you if they need your services, they need your training, your advice, the things that you do that can help them, which is the most efficient and effective way to make contact with you.
Well, if you just want to sort of find out what I do, you go to my Facebook or Instagram, where I share lots of tips and advice and a bit of my weightlifting adventures. If you want to take action for yourself, you can go to my website, which is kimrahir.com on there. And I have a free health and strength assessment that you can take. What I mentioned before, you want to know what your status quo is exactly. You can take a free assessment on there, find out where you are at. I'll give you some hints, some tips, some advice to what you can do next, depending on what your result is. So that's if you want to take action, that's where you want to go to kimrahir.com.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate that. And we thank you for being a wonderful and engaging guest. Finally, Kim, before you go, are you involved in any mentoring programs? Is there any person or persons that you see that you specifically want to work with and it's like a long term plan that could probably take what you're doing into the next generation and so on.
I always work with coaches and mentors because I'm a coach, so I believe in coaching,
Right,
and I'm
right.
working with a great mentor right now.
Mm-hmm.
And for this part of my journey right now, this is exactly what I need. Further down the line, I don't know. I'm always open, and I'm pretty sure I'm trusting that the right person will show up when I need them.
Wonderful. That's a great note to end this episode on. We have been in the presence of Kim Rahir, thriving through adversity. Please check her story out, support her work that she's doing, and ensure that we continue to pay attention to the different aspects of our lives with regards to our mental health and our physical health. And as Kim said earlier on, once you have life, there's always hope that something is going to happen. Never give up, never give in. That's how we'd love to end the episode with our guest today. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development. Thanking Kim for being with us. And for those of you who were online, in and out, I saw some people dropping in, dropping off. Thank you for your continued support and your commitment to the podcast and our associates as well. Until next time, stay safe, stay blessed. Remember, this is the place for health, happiness, and prosperity. Godspeed, so long, shalom, namaste. Bye for now, folks.